Good afternoon, Atlanta Music Project young musicians and friends. I'm Averill, and I'm happy to welcome you to another edition of AMP Online Masterclasses, sponsored by the Chestnut Family Foundation. This class is fundamentals that lead to good oboe playing, taught by Natalie Beckenbaugh. I invite you to participate by playing along at home and by answering questions in the chat. If you'd like, you can also have your video shown to demonstrate a concept as we go through the class. So let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to this masterclass. Today, as Averill said, we're going to be talking about fundamentals of oboe playing. Now, I'm calling it oboe origins because these are some of the first steps that we start to take whenever we're beginning oboe students. And we're going to be talking about things like your embouchure, reeds, hand position, some good warm-ups, and some scales that are good for beginners, as well as a few other topics that might come into question as you're learning the oboe. First things first, we're going to talk about our reeds. Now, having a good reed is very important, and having a reed that is fully functioning and doing what it needs to do is very important. So, to get our reeds ready, you'll need some water and a small cup, kind of like this photo. This is what I have for myself, a little tiny glass, and I put my reed in it. And we only soak our reeds for about 30 seconds to 1 minute, because if we over soak them, that causes the fibers in the reeds to expand too much, and it makes it difficult for the reed to vibrate, and we don't want that. Oboe is already somewhat difficult, and we don't need things getting in our way to make it any more difficult. Now, as you can see in this photo, the water is not too far up in the cup. I have mine filled to right here. It's a little higher than the photo, and that's okay. You don't need to fill your cup all the way to the top. What you really want is to get the cane fully soaked. So don't soak just the tip. You want to get the whole reed wet. All right, so now that our reed is soaking and we are ready to play. Now, when we do this reed test, all reeds ideally should peep at the pitch level B. So that sounds like this. All right, so I want everybody who's watching to try this on their own. Here we go again. This is what we're going for. I will say that if you have a store-bought reed, this might be very difficult because they have a tendency to be flat. And if you have a flat reed, you may not be able to do this. And that's okay, but you should talk to someone like your teacher and figure out a way that you can get a reed that peeps at a B level. So here it is one more time, the B peep. Great. Now we're going to go on to what I call reed push-ups. These are a little warm-up for your mouth only, and they help make sure that your mouth is developing the correct muscles it needs to eventually go up and down on the oboe. So we're going to get out our tuner. I have mine right here because we want to make sure we're doing the correct pitches. We're going to start by holding the B pitch at a forte dynamic, just like we were before. Then we're going to slowly descend in half-step intervals and then return to the main pitch. So as you can see on the screen, I've written out what that looks like. I'm going to demo and then we're going to do it together. So this is what it should sound like. I want you to make sure that you don't go any lower than an A flat. If you go lower than an A flat, your reed isn't very stable and needs some work. So why don't we try this together again? Here we go. We'll go in slow half notes. 1, 2, ready, and. Great job. Now we're going to go in the opposite direction. We're going to go up. So it's the same thing, but we go up this time in half step and whole step intervals instead of down. And again, we don't want to go any higher than the D. So like we didn't go lower than the A flat, we're not going to go any higher than D. I'm going to do an example, and then we're going to do it together. This is what it should sound like. All right, with me in slow half notes. 1, 2, ready, and. And those are reed push-ups. I do these before I even put my reed into the oboe. It helps my face warm up, and then we're gonna get our oboe warmed up. But first, before we do that, I wanted to just talk a little bit more about how important our reeds are. These are everything for an oboist. If you have a bad reed, you can't really do anything. That's why to take care of them and really be aware of their condition at all times is super important. When we aren't playing, they need to be protected well. So as you can see, I've picked out some good cases and some bad cases. Now, I'd like to clarify, when I say a bad reed case, I mean more of I wouldn't prefer my students to have these. I would prefer them to have the good reed case. The only reason I say that is because the ones on the right don't hold together as well as the ones on the left, from my personal experience. And they have the reeds have a tendency to fly out of the case, or the pegs that are holding the reeds in the upper picture on the right don't have a very secure, they don't fit the staple, which is this part of the reed, very well. And the actual case itself sometimes can crack if it's, you know, in your backpack or in your case and accidentally gets smushed. The ones on the left are more sturdy. Here's one that I have. It doesn't have the pegs on the bottom, but this has a good amount of grasp to it. I know that these reeds aren't going to go anywhere, even if, heaven forbid, I dropped it, which I don't want to do, but if it happened, I know that they would be relatively okay. And as oboists, you have to be sure of the condition of your reed. So if you notice that maybe your tip is starting to chip a little bit, or it's becoming more difficult to play on a regular basis, you need to tell your teacher or your parent, whoever's getting your reeds for you, so that they can either order you one or ask your teacher to make one in time for you to have one before this reed, or whatever reed you're using, starts to, you know, no longer work. Because if, like I said, if you don't have a reed, you're not really an oboe player, because we need them to do everything.
Hey, Natalie, can I say something? Yes. So we've got some guests out in the audience. Not sure what their capacity is, and mine is as an educator, and I'm learning a lot about the reeds as we go.
Okay.
And we've encountered the problem of having broken reeds quite often, and I'm learning that we've also been using the cheaper cases that are not holding the reeds still inside of the case, so that may have been part of the problem. And it's also mishandling of the reeds as well. So yes. It was good to hear that, and that's something I'm taking note of. So thank you.
Yeah. And another way that you can protect your reeds is by, you know, not putting them on the stand and walking away, or putting them in your oboe and putting your oboe on the chair and then walking away. You always have to have them either in your mouth, in your own hand, or in the case. That's kind of the way we want to live our lives as oboists, to protect our reeds. All right, we're getting closer to playing now. We're going to talk about hand position for a second. This is also something that's very important, because if it's not done properly, it can lead to problems down the road. If you look at this lovely gentleman in the picture, he is demonstrating a good posture. His feet are flat on the floor, his back is away from the back of the chair, and his arms are not too close or too far away from his body, and his fingers look like they are, you know, nice and curved and holding the oboe correctly. To dive in a little deeper about what it means to have good, you know, good posture and good hand position. When we play the oboe, we don't want to have any tension. We want to be super relaxed in our neck, in our shoulders, and in our arms. and in our fingers. A lot of students sometimes get tense whenever they start learning the oboe because it is hard. I mean, and learning anything new is hard. So they get stressed and they put tension in their fingers. That's not going to help you. It's going to make things harder. I will see a lot of students breathe from their shoulders or in their chest, like, and that's not good either. We want to breathe from our diaphragm. So we have to be fully relaxed to do what we need to do. Now, the oboe has one position really that we put our finger and all of the weight is on, and that is on our right thumb. Now, it sounds like a lot for your tiny little thumb to hold the whole oboe, so you have to imagine it going into your arm. So obviously your thumb is, you know, an extension of your arm. So we want to think about the whole right arm holding the oboe rather than just your thumb. And where we put the oboe is in between the end of your fingernail and your knuckle. So in this section right here, that's where you want to put your thumb. Not over here and not on the edge, right here. This allows the rest of your fingers to be able to curve around and cover the holes completely, which is the next subject we're going to talk about. Now, in my oboe, I have a professional model, so if you have a student model, you may not have as many tone holes as I do, and that's okay. You still need to work on covering the keys properly, because if you ever graduate to another model, you may have key holes that you have to cover. So if you can see in mine, I have those tone holes and then some tone holes down there. If I don't cover these all the way when I'm playing certain notes, things aren't going to work. So the sooner you can learn to keep your fingers perfectly on those keys, the better off you're going to be. Now a few more points. A trouble spot that you're going to run into in terms of your fingers and covering those holes is the ring finger on your left hand. So we're talking about this finger right here. As you can see, it has to reach the farthest out of any of the fingers in my left hand. And keeping it curved does become difficult at some points. So if you have to remind yourself constantly to curve this finger just a little bit, that's what you need to do. It's going to help you down the road. A way to give your finger a little more curvature and a little more room is to lift your left arm slightly. Not severely, because we don't want to be, you know, looking like this at a right angle. Just a little slightly away from your body, maybe more than you would normally if you were playing. And this allows your hand to come up and over a little bit more to give you that space to reach this key. Because the tendency is to want to slide off of it, and we don't want that. We want it to be right on top. So talking about curved fingers, we don't want to ever play flat fingered. Okay? Not like this. We want to curve our fingers, and when we curve our fingers, this allows us to use this portion of our finger. Not this portion. So it's the section right past your fingernail. So if we use if we are flat fingered, it's going to look like that, and that's not what we want. When we curve our fingers, it's perfect, just like that. So that is the goal for our hand position. And obviously, I'm holding it so that you all can see, so I wouldn't necessarily be twisting my wrists this much in real life. Alrighty, so that covers hand position. I know you all are eager to get playing, so why don't we start? This is something that I do whenever I start a practice session. They're warm-ups. They're what any sports person would do to get their body warmed up and ready to play the game. So we're going to start with long tones first. I have two sets of long tones. I call one 5-note scales, and I call the other one long tones. The 5-note scales may be difficult for a beginner if they are unsure of the fingerings for these notes. So you can also just do this exercise on one note. And that's what we're going to do in this class. So I'm going to choose the note F, which if you're a beginner and you're not sure, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then the banana key right here in between your D key and the E key right here. And we're just going to hold it for as long as we possibly can. I'm probably going to do something like 8 counts. At a strong dynamic, not a blast blasting dynamic. It's a nice forte, and we're just gonna hold it for, you know, a good long time. And it's important that you don't let the sound die out as you go on. You want it to be as strong in the beginning and in the end. Not, you know, we don't waver from the beginning or the end. It should be strong and consistent the entire time. So why don't we try it together? 1, 2, hold it for as long as possible. 1, 2, ready. Okay, there you go, Sarah. Okay, great job. Now we're gonna go on to what I call long tones. These are slightly different. Once you do your 5-note scale.
Excuse me, Natalie. And the session's going great. I hate to interrupt. When you guys do the examples, could we do like one at a time instead of both at the same time?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we're okay. Yeah, we can do that. Now the long tones, the piano dynamic, and then we gradually crescendo to a forte, our personal forte, and then we gradually diminuendo into our personal piano. So this is kind of extending our dynamic range, and as we do these, the range will get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you're a beginner, it might not be very big, and that is okay. As you get older, it will slowly increase. So this is what it should sound like. All right, so now let's try. So we're going to go in slow half notes. Well, I'm going to count you off, and then I'm going to go up to 5. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is your biggest dynamic, and then I'll count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you'll be at your softest dynamic. Here we go. Ready, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. So it's a challenge. It's definitely a struggle at the beginning, but I promise it will get better the more you do it.
And also, make sure that you sit with the best posture possible, Sarah, when you're demonstrating.
Yes. There you go. Back away from that chair and don't rest that oboe on that knee. All right, now we're going to move on to some scales, because scales are very important in our warm-up. I have chosen these 3 because I think that they are, well, first off, they introduce flats and sharps, which as oboists, we're more accustomed to flats. So that's why the sooner you can be introduced to sharps, the better, so your brain can be better at reading them. These are also notes that are usually introduced within the first couple of months in beginning oboe, so learning them is not too challenging. But today we're going to work on F major specifically. Now, if you're unsure of what some of these fingerings are, there are plenty of resources out in the world for you to be able to figure these out if you don't have a teacher. You can go online and look up oboe fingering charts. There are videos on YouTube that can help you out. So fear not, if you are teacherless, you can still do this by yourself. I'm going to show you the fingerings, and then we're going to play the scale. So here we go. This is F. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, banana key. Then we go to G, A, B flat, C, D, and this is a half whole note. We're going to talk about that more later. E natural with the back octave key, and then F. I'm going to play it, and then we're going to play it together. Here's the F major scale. We're going to do it in slow half notes so that we have time to think about what we're doing. Here we go. F major. 1, 2, half notes, go. All right, there we go. Now B flat major, and in the picture that I have shown, it is 1 octave. This is where if you have a student model, you may only be able to do it 2 octaves. I have the low B flat key on my oboe. If you don't have it, that's okay. You still can do 1 octave. But if you do have this key, I strongly encourage you to push yourselves at some point once you feel comfortable and try to do the B flat major scale 2 octaves. So from low B flat to the high B flat that's printed on the screen. And then just to quickly go over, if you're not sure what F sharp is in terms of the fingering for the G major scale, it's 1, 2, 3, and your first finger with the back octave key. Okay? So these 3 scales are great for beginner oboes. I think they introduce some good skills and some good accidentals, and obviously B flat is the band key, so I would assume that most of you would be playing B flat anyways in your classes if you are in band. All right, so now we have gone over, you know, most of the fundamentals that I would say in terms of what are some good warm-ups, the hand positions that you want, the important facts about the reeds. Now I want to go over some other topics that might come up while you're practicing and learning about the oboe that could be kind of challenging, and you might want a little bit more clarification. So one of them is the half hole transition. This is when, for example, the note, I'm going to talk about D as our main note because it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's a half hole note. So like from C to D, we go to the half hole. Now, the half hole is not another key. It's not something that you push down. It is the opening of this hole right here. You don't have to uncover this hole completely for the half hole to work. I'm going to go from a low D to a middle D, the half hole D, and this is going to show you how little you actually have to move your finger for the half hole to work. So you can barely see my finger move. It's a minor movement. I like to say that you need to uncover it just enough so that the air escapes from the tone hole. And I call this motion a pivot slide motion. It is your index finger moving back and forth a little bit, but it's also in your wrist as well. It's a very small movement, though. We don't want to have it be a major movement. And I see a lot of beginning oboists. They either put their finger entirely on this portion of the key, and you don't need to do that. You can leave it right here and just use this kind of as an assistant to half hole, but you don't need to come all the way down here for it to work. I also see students hop from this key down to this portion of the key.
Hey,
so
Nat.
Yes.
You're doing such a great job, and here I come one more time. But one thing that I'm thinking about, and this is the advantage of doing these online lessons while the kids are at home, is we have the opportunity to help them set up the best environment for practicing.
Yes.
So just in that regard, to really set us up for the highest level of success possible, do you all have like a dining room style chair or a chair? And then also, could we I think maybe if we set the screen up a little higher, you wouldn't have to look down.
Okay.
And that adjustment would just have us operating at the prime level. So. Okay. And thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
And thank you for being so bold to do this online as well.
I personally am sitting in a rolly chair without arms because I have to move around my reed desk quite a bit to do things.
Okay.
But I also, with my students, I don't let them sit in a rolly chair. I make them sit in a card table chair so that their feet can touch the ground. But is this better in terms of my...
Oh, no, not you. I was referring to Sarah's
Sarah.
placement. Yeah,
Okay.
not yours. No, no, no.
Well, Sarah, I also think that your phone is on the floor,
And
right?
that may be what it really is. I think the angle of the phone is
Yeah.
causing you to have to look down. Is there a way we could bring the phone up a little bit?
So this is my computer.
Oh, okay.
Do
Can
you
the
have a
computer
desk or
come
anything
higher?
that you could put your computer on? Or your bed? There, I think that's much better.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. It's so important that we really need to take time out to do that. So thank you, Sarah. Okay, please resume.
Okay, great.
All right.
I think I was talking about hopping. Oh, I see a lot of students who hop from this portion of the key down to this key. We should never, ever do that. You want to keep your index finger on this key the entire time and just let that key vent open. So again, I'm going to do my low D to middle D transition. And I want everybody to try that in their own personal practice. So again, D, low D is just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then to make the middle D, you slowly uncover your first index finger in your left hand. And again, it's a minor, minor movement. Don't do anything too drastic. There you go. The next topic that you might run into is as you're expanding your range, we get into the lower register versus the upper register of the oboe. Now, when I say the word register, I'm talking about the range, low notes versus high notes. So this is kind of the low notes that I'm talking about. And these are the higher notes that I'm talking about. So as we get into those, you might face some challenges because they're a little more difficult to produce than the middle range. I like to say that the low register requires warm air, an open throat, a more relaxed embouchure, and slower air. And then on the flip side, the upper register requires cold, fast air, a smaller throat shape, and a little bit more reed in your mouth. Now we're going to do a little experiment here. So I want everybody to hold their hand up in front of their face and pretend like you're about to fog a mirror. That air is warm and relatively slow. That's the kind of air we're going to use when we're playing in the lower register. Now, do the same thing with your hand and pretend like you're going to whistle, but don't actually whistle and just blow the air. It is colder and faster, and that's the kind of air that we're going to use in the upper register. Another thing that we can do to help us, know the feelings of our body and what we're trying to do is if we sing a nice low note, ba, you can feel your throat open up and be, relaxed. Whereas if we sing the same note a little higher, ba, it gets smaller and the air is more focused. Now, I don't want you to think that your throat is getting tighter. That's not the word that I would use. It is getting smaller and more focused. You're pinpointing the air in a certain direction rather than getting tense. Because remember, if we get tense, things start to go downhill. All right, so now we've kind of gone over the basics for what I would say, a beginning oboe player needs. And I want to talk about now oboe maintenance and what it means to take care of your oboe, what you do when you're finished playing, and something actually that you need to do before you even put the reed in the water. And that is, so a lot of you will have plastic oboes, and that's fine. Oh, hi, Audrey. A lot of you will have plastic oboes, and that's okay. You should still get into the habit of doing this anyways. I personally have a wooden oboe, so I have to be very careful. If my oboe gets too cold, it could crack when I blow warm air into it. So what I do before I begin every practice session is I take the top joint and I put it under my arm. And then I take the bottom with the bell and then the middle joint and put this under my arm. And then I start to get my reed out, get my water ready. all that stuff. I do this for about 2 to 5 minutes, and it actually warms the oboe up itself so that when I finally blow warm air into it, it is ready to go and it's not going to expand too quickly and crack. Now, when we're done with the oboe, we always, okay, so we finished practicing. What do we put away first? We put our reed away first because our reeds are very important. And if something happens to them, we are out of luck. So we put our reed in our reed case, and then we continue with cleaning the oboe. Now, I use these kinds of swabs, and I strongly suggest any beginning oboist to use the same. It has a weight on the end, it's silk in the middle, and then it has a string on the other end. This is important because we need to be able to pull it back and forth in case it gets stuck. Now, if it gets stuck, don't panic, but it might not come out, and then you might have to take it to the shop and get it taken out. The way you can avoid this is because there are 2 types of swabs. There are pull-through swabs, and then there are not pull-through. I know personally that mine is a pull-through, so I can pull it through my entire oboe, and I know it's not going to get stuck. If you are unsure of what yours is, you're going to say that it is a not pull-through, and you're going to clean your oboe like this. You're going to break it apart into the sections. You're going to put the weighted end through the bottom of the top joint until it comes out the little tone hole at the end. Oop. You're going to pull it through only partially. I would say about this much. And then you're going to use this and pull it back through. And you do this a couple of times until the oboe is clean and dry. Then you would take the next portion of the oboe, and this is where, now this portion doesn't matter as much. It's mainly the top joint that you have to worry about it getting stuck in. I put it through the bell till it comes out the end, and I pull it all the way through. Do it again, do it a couple times, and you look down your instrument to see if it's dry or not. Okay, and now when we put it back in the case, we make sure that they are laying level within the sections where they're supposed to go. And if you have these caps that come with your case, usually, they go like this on the end, you need to do your very best to not lose them. They protect the cork from getting damaged. Now, if you don't have them, it's not the end of the world, but I would encourage you to look into getting some. If you are struggling taking your oboe apart and putting it together, that may be because you don't have enough cork grease. Cork grease comes in something that looks like a tube of chapstick. And I think you probably could use chapstick as cork grease, but we're going to use cork grease because that's what it's designated for. It can come in a container like this. It can also come in a circular container about this big in your oboe case. What you do is you just do one round around your cork, and then you can do this before or after your practice session. It does not matter, or after both, depending on how dry it is. And then you put it away. And when you shut the case, you do not slam it. You gently close it so that it does not damage the keys, because oboe is very finicky, and if you bend a key slightly, everything could be thrown off. And that is really what I believe all beginning oboe students should know and have an understanding of, so that they have good practice sessions, and then they, form positive, good habits that can then lead to great oboe playing. So that is all from me. Thank you all for listening today. I hope you found this information helpful. And if you do have questions, reach out to, I guess, Avril, and he'll relay them to me, and I can answer them to the best of my ability.
Yeah, this is really well done, and thank you. And with the time that we have left, we love for anyone that has any questions. You can also put them in the chat, or you can use the raise your hand feature. And I think it would be a great opportunity, since we've got Sarah and we've got Audrey. let's take them through some of the exercises that you discussed just with the last 10 minutes of the session. So just some of the warm-up exercises, they could demonstrate some of those.
Okay, yeah. Why don't we go back to, let's see. Let's do, okay, I'm gonna think about what.
And like, what, and really, I'd like to know, like, Sierra and Audrey, when you all take your oboes out and you assemble them for your practice session, what is the very first thing that you do? What's your very first exercise or piece of music? What do you do first? How about let's go with Audrey first. Could you unmute?
Unmute yourself. There you go.
What I usually do, I get the oboe band book and I usually start playing the pages that I'm assigned to, or I just go to the first page, which is technically like a warm-up page to me.
Okay. And then same question to Sierra, and then Miss Natalie will give some feedback on you guys' answer. Sierra, what's the first thing that you do?
I do the B flat, F, and D.
Could you speak a little louder? We can't hear you.
I do the B flat, D, and F scale.
Okay, so you start with those scales.
Yeah.
All right, and then Miss Natalie, what would you say to that?
Okay, well, Audrey has just started, so she's only been playing a couple weeks, and we have started to learn the F major scale, but we're still working on getting those fingerings down. So she's kind of doing what she needs to do at this moment. We're gonna slowly introduce, those long tones and the 5-note scales and work on these scales. Sierra, she's doing what she needs to do. We probably need to work more on doing long tones and those 5-note scales at the beginning to really increase the volume dynamic that you are able to play, because that's something that I think a lot of young players struggle with, is their dynamic range and making a forte really forte versus a piano actually very piano.
Okay, all right. And so let's go through that process of how you would recommend their first steps of the day on the oboe with their first practice session. How you recommend that should go.
Okay, so if I'm working with a person who's not really sure or can't do a 5-note scale in the low register, I will tell them to just go G, F, E, D, and then C. So I think Sierra and Audrey, you both know how to do this. Audrey, you might not know what low C is, and that's okay. But what I would do is I would just tell them to start on a G and descend slowly. So this is kind of like a 5-note scale, but it's not, you can just really blow and have a lot of volume come out of your oboe. So do we want to try that? Okay, here we go. Here we go. We'll do them in, we'll go in whole notes. So I'll count it off. 1, 2, whole notes. That was it. Here we go. We'll try again. 1, 2, ready, and. Go down. We're going down. So we go G, F, E, D, C. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. You remember what C is? Low C is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then your first pinky key. There you go. Now I would say, Sierra, we need to hold out the notes a little bit longer and be really strong with our air. So I want them to be like whole notes. Now, if you're doing this by yourself, you don't necessarily have to count. You can just hold them for as long as possible. Got it? Let's try it again. We'll go in whole notes. 1, 2, ready, and. And that's what, you know, Sarah, what you're experiencing is what a budding oboist would go through, is getting those low notes to actually speak. And that's where we have to work on what your embouchure is doing, making sure your oboe is fully functioning and adjusted properly, and then making sure that you have a reed that works, and ultimately making sure that, you know, you're rolling out enough on the reed and not having too much reed in your mouth, and that you're using those warm air, open throat, all of that good stuff. But the lower notes are a challenge for younger students. So that's why it's better to introduce them earlier rather than later, so they can get a better grasp on them faster.
Yeah, understood. And I could definitely hear when she approached the lower notes, the note came out, but it was an octave higher.
Yeah. Making sure that everything is in the correct position in terms of your muscles and your embouchure. It's important.
It was one thing that I noticed that was across the board, at least, well, it was an exercise that that the trumpet players and the horn players talked about too, which was, we call it pitch bending, and I think you were calling it reed
push-ups.
Yeah, and that's something that we do too, and it helps us enhance our tone quality, and it helps us to be able to play in tune, or make intonation adjustments without having to go to the tuning slide. So,
yes, yeah, because as oboists, we don't have a tuning slide. We are what we are based on our reed. So if we need to come up in pitch, it's all in our embouchure, or down in pitch, it's all in our embouchure.
Interesting. And could we see the students, is Audrey able to demonstrate long tones at this point?
They might not be very far in dynamic range, but she could probably do one.
Okay. Could we do just maybe one or two examples with Audrey? And Audrey, would you adjust so that we can see all of the keys on your oboe as well? Thank you very much.
Okay, so Audrey, what you're going to do is you're going to pick a note. Why don't we do B flat? And you're going to start at the softest dynamic that you possibly can, crescendo to your strongest dynamic, and then diminuendo back to your softest dynamic. And I'm going to count for you. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the biggest, 1 is the smallest. And then I'll count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're back to your piano, right? Make sense? You gotta unmute yourself.
Is there like a order that I'm supposed to do, or are there just notes that I play?
It's just one note. It's all about volume.
Okay.
So here, I'll demo it for you, and then you can do it. So we're gonna use B flat. Okay, so I'm going to count for you. Here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There you go. So yeah, when we start to diminuendo, it becomes more difficult because it takes more control to get that note to be softer without being too sharp in pitch.
And that was another exercise that was common too with the brass players was doing long tones regularly. It also helps us control the instrument better as well. So we've come to the end of the masterclass session. I think it was really well done. So I want to say thank you to Miss Natalie. And I also want to say thank you to all, or we also want to say thank you to all of the participants. And just for all of the participants and everyone that was observing, I think we know we can't recreate actually being at AMP, but the good thing is that we have the opportunity to get kind of work on the at-home practice routine and the at-home setup. So I think that's one of the things that we should just really focus in on as being a positive while we're doing these sessions. And I'm really proud of you, of everyone. I think you all did an outstanding job. And please continue to tune in to the master classes and to the online classes. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.